What up? What up, Elliot? How are you?
Good. Doing real good. How are you?
I'm good, man. Why'd your parents fuck up spelling your name?
I was going to ask you the same question. They must not have loved you enough. I'm sorry, bro.
I know, right? Two Elliots doing jiu-jitsu. So good to talk to you. Thanks for talking to me during these crazy times of Corona.
Thank you. Huge honor for me.
So man, I was on your website and dude, the whole thing is really cool. Like I have so many questions for you.
Uh-huh.
The first one, what was the spark in 2004 that made you say, fuck this corporate shit?
That's a long story.
Okay. We have a long time. Okay. The only thing I got to do is get my first and fourth grader through school at some point today, but I got nothing else to do.
Okay. Well, let's get into it. So it was some time before that. I grew up in a Toronto suburb. Every family's got their challenges, but for the most part, I was had a pretty privileged, relaxed life. And then high school, more in university, I met some folks who had more of a social consciousness perspective, and then read a few books after university that opened my eyes to suffering in the world. And initially, I did what, I thought you do. I joined different human rights groups and went to protests and rallies. And around the same time, using some, we can talk about it later if you like, but using what I call mental jiu-jitsu, I tried to really sit with the problems we're facing. And as I kind of read and watched more, there was a documentary that showed me that the problems we're facing are really systemic. And I realized that unless the systems themselves change, we're not really going to be able to make a sustainable difference. That no matter, which group I was trying to help, even if they had their mandates met, people would still suffer. And so I tried to look at how do we actually change the systems? And so I had this idea back then that I was like, okay, I can't, working in the corporate world, I'm not going to be able to get this off the ground.
What was your corporate job?
I was in corporate sales for initially a corporate events company and then tech startup.
Okay.
Around the same time, and I think this might've been when I first heard about you, because for some reason and Elliot hears about another Elliot.
Yes. We do love each other. That's right. That's very true.
So it was around, I want to say it was the Naga Grappler's Quest kind of heyday.
Yeah.
So I went down with a few of my training partners, for a Naga, big event. I was still a blue belt, and did very well, won my division, ended up jumping into the purple, brown, black, did pretty well, all things considered, very well there, but just had such an amazing time. And I was surrounded by positive people. I was doing something healthy. It was fun. I got to meet all sorts of great people. And I just realized that I didn't, on the way, I met some folks who, I don't know if you know Jared Weiner. He's all really good guy, but he was reffing one of my fights. He was all tatted up, and I was thinking about getting a tattoo around that time. And on the ride back, I wanted to get something. I didn't know what I wanted. I wanted to get something that really captured the essence of what I was feeling there. I was thinking maybe jiu-jitsu. I didn't quite. I love jiu-jitsu, obviously, but it wasn't quite what I wanted to capture. What I didn't want to have happen was I didn't want to wake up in 20 or 30 years and realize I had lived someone else's dream, and so I got the word dream tattooed backwards across my chest. Backwards, so I could see it in the mirror. Because it wasn't for anyone else. It was for me, kind of as a reminder, and it was meant to be this long-term reminder. But what happened was every day I was waking up and looking in the mirror and having dream kind of shoved down my throat, so to speak. And within 3 months of that, I had kind of harmonized the seed of this big idea and quit my job, cashed in my life savings, and started my first school. So between kind of my amazing experience in jiu-jitsu and realizing, man, life doesn't have to be I had a great job, but it just wasn't really fulfilling. And I realized life can be much more. Plus I had this big impact mission that I wanted to get off the ground, and I saw entrepreneurship as a vehicle to get there. So that was kind of the impetus.
I totally feel you. Mine was in college, while I was in college, and I was doing martial arts my whole life and whatnot. But I feel you. I was like headed towards a job where I was going to make a lot of money, but fuck, was it going to be boring? Actuary. I'm a math major. I got a math degree.
Right. I heard you say that on a,
yeah. So I got a math degree and all, and it would have been cool, but fuck. I mean, just sitting like, I don't know, like what impact
the lifestyle, right?
I mean, I bet the lifestyle would have been just fine. They don't work that much, right? Like it's, I think it was, at the time when I was looking at it, was like a 4-day work week, 3 days off. The hours were good. The money was ridiculous. Like, $250 a year, and when you're 19, like $250 a year, I mean,
yep.
You might as well tell me it's 10 million, right? Like you're eating ramen. Yeah, man. But you had God, it was just so dull. For me, it was the dullness. Like, let's try to be great. That was mine. And then it moved after that, but go ahead.
Moved to what?
Oh, now we're very aligned. I don't look at let's change the world, let's change the world,
Right on.
And I got some really good advice about changing the world though.
Please.
So I met with somebody who did Tim Ferriss's podcast. Right? He was at the beginning of Tim Ferriss's podcast, and then he worked on Jocko's podcast after that. And now he's the, I don't know, COO of this company called Ladder, which is a supplement company, LeBron and Arnold supplement company.
Dang.
Yeah, it's pretty, he's a cool dude. He's here in Denver. And I was asking him how to grow my podcast, and he was like, look, just focus on one person. He's like, literally really change one person's life. Don't look at the macro, go the micro, go as micro as you can. And then if you really change that one person's life, they're bound to tell somebody, they are bound, because that's what we do. And that's,
go ahead.
And that's for sure what I do. I'm an evangelical motherfucker.
Yeah, no, I've been, I think that, so I think that's amazing advice in lieu of another plan. And so for most people, if like, what I will say is, if you don't have something specific you think can really make that impact, then absolutely, like, it is a significant impact just to impact those around you, those you touch. Right. And, when I first had this vision, this idea, 15-ish years ago, I used to feel like it's trying to address the big picture. And so I got evangelical, and I felt like everyone needs to be working on the big picture. And if you're focused on this little group, or, being, professional, an actor, whatever, you're missing the point. Everyone should be focused on this. And I realized, that was me, swallowing my own, or, drinking my own Kool-Aid.
What was this that you wanted people to focus on?
Changing the whole world. Like and I'm happy to share, but this plan for like global impact.
Okay.
But I realized, that the reason that resonated so strongly is because that's my mission. If your mission, if what resonates with you, if your way to make the world a better place is to raise a loving family and send out kids into the world with high self-esteem who are going to do their own thing, like, then go do that. If it's to write a book, a novel to inspire people, like, go do that. And so I realized, like, rather than try to shove my mission down other people's throats, it's more about, like, if, I don't like the idea of shoving anything down anyone's throat, but if you're going to, better to shove the idea of follow your own passion, find your own passion. So very connected to my impact idea, or some realizations, thoughts, revelations I've had in that vein over the, I guess, decade or so, or last decade or so.
Man, it's taken me a long time to get here because, I mean, man, outside of the name, you and I are so similar. Yes, I was very much, and still can be sometimes, the same way, right? Where I'm like, doesn't even fucking matter, right? Like, I love this Peloton. I don't shut the fuck up about my Peloton, right? Like, I don't know.
It's coming from a good place,
right?
Because it's made such an impact for you.
Yes.
And you feel like you love people so much, you want them to benefit from it.
Yes.
And that's where it's coming from. And that's where it was initially coming from for me when I would do the same thing. It's just realizing that you can have the best message in the world, but one, not everyone's ready to hear it right now. And two, you may not be speaking their language right now, right? So it's like, it's more about, I think, finding offer, but don't force, right? And that goes back to a lot of the, like, I heard you talk about some Eastern philosophy ideas, and that's been a big influence for me. So for me, it's more just like one thing I like about the philosophies that have resonated is this idea of like being non-coercive, you know. Don't try to force things. And that for me is very much jiu-jitsu. And I think that's what resonates so much. Like I've been working on this jiu-jitsu book for years, understanding jiu-jitsu, which not only gets into technique and principles, but some of the philosophy behind it. And one of the main ideas is that jiu-jitsu literally translated means gentle art. And for me, it's the only non-violent martial art. And so you seem, like a really peace-loving person, even though, you've accomplished UFC fighter. And the beauty of jiu-jitsu, like take Damian Maia, for example, like he talks about wanting to be an example of not needing to hurt an opponent to win. And so I feel like we can take that philosophy that jiu-jitsu kind of inherently teaches and apply that in everything we do. And, and in those times when I find myself getting like overly evangelical, that's a good time to reflect and ask myself, like, okay, why am I so attached to this person? Is it that I want them to like me? Is it that I want to be recognized as a kind person? Cause that's how I feel good about myself, and just reflect on that. Just because, and what caused me to reflect on these things so much is just, it doesn't work. When you, there's a line in the Tao Te Ching, reach for things and you push them away. It's the more you try to force, there's compulsive energy, things that attract, and there's repulsive energy, things that push away. And I find, I probably wouldn't like to have someone being evangelical with me. That itself, even if the message was right, would be hard to receive. Right. So that's been some of my processing in when I get excited about something. Like there's Dan Kennedy, who's a big marketing, passed away, but marketing guru, talks about media market message. So, if you're selling, a TRX to 90-year-olds, like it's not a market fit, right? If you are selling to kids through newspapers, it's not the right medium. And so you want to align all those things. And that applies not just in marketing, but in personal conversations. Like if the medium is a very like enthusiastic, pushy encouragement to try something, that may not be the right message for everyone. Now, different contexts. If you're in a room full of people who are there to hear you speak and hear then that's the perfect context. And I just found that it wasn't the best when like even everyone who finds jiu-jitsu wants all their friends to do it. And that's a sure way to lose a lot of friends, right? So
yeah. I don't think I have any anymore.
Oh, no. Well, you got me. You got a good name. So.
No, that don't do jiu-jitsu, I'm saying.
Yeah. Right, of course.
I was discussing this with my wife last night. Just about like when you start like straying a little bit, but that topic of friends in jiu-jitsu, right? Like you start doing jiu-jitsu and the next thing you know, you don't have any other friends. Right. Because you get so hooked in jiu-jitsu.
Oh yeah.
And that's part of it, right? Is you're there every night. you know? Back to what you were saying about a second ago, though, man, it's so interesting, right? Because I can even, and you all of us can, right? When you're the instructor and it's the end of your class, right? And you're going to give some message. We always like to try to, every class we give some message, right? Whether it's a beginner class or not. And you're the one standing up front, you're giving the message. You can evangelize almost as much as you want, right? Because they are there kind of for it. They came to school, they came to the class. There's
part of the service.
Part of the service, right? But then we jump on this medium. We're just talking about the podcast. People might just want to check it out. They have no buy-in with me or with you yet, right? Like not yet. You have to build that buy-in.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
I'm talking an initial podcast, you have to, so you have to, the message has to be slightly different. That's a good way that you put it there. It's something that I've had to learn through podcasting is like, okay, how do I speak better? How do I be more impeccable with my word? And then it's even helped me in the other sense too, right? When I start to talk to the class, because you can transfer now between the two mediums well.
I think, and I get what you're saying with kind of that initial podcast, people have to get to know you first. But I think in general, like if people are coming to listen to you, it's the time to share what you're passionate about,
right?
In a kind of one-to-one personal context. And the problem was, before we got on, I was talking about how your identity can get wrapped up in what you do. Right. And because as a teacher, we get to share things that have benefited our lives and then see it really make a difference. Like, I'm sure you've had the same, but I've had so many people over the years tell me that either the space or a certain class or a certain experience or a certain conversation we had changed their lives. That feels good. That's like massive dopamine hit, never mind the serotonin. And then it's like, well, you want that again. And then you're there chatting with a friend who, is maybe expressing a problem and you're still in instructor mode and helping mode. And that's not necessarily, or if you've got a partner and they're talking, right. They're talking about a problem and it's classic partnership problem people talk about, like partner's not really just trying to solve the problem when that's not what they needed. They needed,
especially on the male side, right?
You hear that, right? So,
yeah,
I've definitely
I do it.
I do it all the time, and it's it comes from a good place again. But I think that's maturity, right? It's like becoming more conscious of why you're doing the things you do, and more, are you doing it for you or are you doing it for them? And if you're doing it for them, well, you got to take into account like where they're coming from and what they need right now.
That's that last word that you were not now need. I read a great book, Nonviolent Communication. Have you read it?
Marshall
Rosenberg.
Marshall Rosenberg. I've heard of it. Stephen Kesting spoke about it years ago.
And man, it comes down to two things: feelings and needs. Like I almost put this fucking book down after the first chapter. Because it was like he was talking all about feelings. And I agree that we need to be very aware of our feelings, but I believe our feelings are kind of on us, right? Like
that's the mature approach, to take responsibility for your own feelings. Yeah.
So the book started out just talking about feelings, and I was like, I'm about to put this shit down, right? Like, and then he said in chapter 2, now your feelings are yours. And I was like, okay, I'm back. I got back in, right?
You got me back
because if we go another chapter about feelings, I'm fucking out. But then he talked about the word need. And this is where it really connected. And I understand why he did the whole feelings thing first. He was like, look, you feel a certain way because you have a need that's not getting met, And if we can express in feelings and need in our communication, and it's helped me a lot with my wife. I will say, like when she, and look, we're, I don't know, 2001. So we're almost 20 years in here together, And I mean, look, I read this book 6 months ago, right? And I was like, and I've been able to ask her, hey, babe, what I hear you saying is this,
Mm-hmm.
you know, is, can I ask you what it is that you need from me? You know, and then on the vice versa, rather than express that I'm angry or mad or upset, I can ask for, hey, babe, I need this, right, from you. And then the key of it, the key of the whole thing was, can you tell me what it is I said that I need? Right? Because it's so often that what that person repeats is not what you're asking for.
Right. Reminds me of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, kind of classic book on personal development.
Right.
For those that haven't read it, the first 3 chapters are about how you kind of deal with yourself. And then the second 3 are about how you deal with others. And the first of those chapters on dealing with others is seek first to understand before you seek to be understood. And his tool, his hack for making sure you understand is you have to be able to repeat what the person said in better words than they could articulate themselves. And then when they really, when you can do that, then they feel understood, and then they're willing to listen to whatever you have to say.
Right.
And it sounds very aligned with the nonviolent communication strategies.
Yeah. I mean, when was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People written?
I feel like I want to say the 70s, maybe.
Right. Okay.
It's Stephen Covey. And it was based on, I think it might've been his like thesis. But it was based, from what I recall, on like 200 years study of 200 years of personal development work. And he noticed that in the beginning of the 20th century, it shifted from like focusing on your character to focusing on like tricks to like win friends and influence people rather than like actually growing as a person. I have
to say though, win friends and influence people was very similar to nonviolent communication. Like it was the same hacks, like that you called them, right? Like I was surprised when I got done one, you know, and then when I was reading Marshall Rosenberg's, I was like, man, this sounds just like Dale Carnegie. Like 100 years later, right?
Sure.
Or 80 years later, whatever it was. But I was like, man, this is really interesting.
Have you heard the Buddhist metaphor of the finger pointing at the moon?
Go ahead. Sure.
So they say that like they're referencing religions in this case, but it applies here as well. Like they say that, you know, religions are like a finger pointing at the moon. If you stay focused on the finger, you're never going to see the moon. And people get so caught up in my religion, your religion, that they're forgetting that they're all pointing towards something beyond them, right? And people get so caught up in the finger, they forget to look at what's really being talked about. And so it sounds like nonviolent communication and win friends and influence people, how to win friends and influence people. They're both talking about the same. And I think so much of self-help is really talking about the same thing, just different language for pointing you in that direction. And that's been a really useful metaphor for me growing up, quite averse to, I guess, structured philosophy, religion. Like I didn't have great experiences with religion growing up. So I got like super turned off to the point that I couldn't engage with someone who was coming from that perspective, couldn't read anything in that space. Because, one, it felt very coercive, and two, I just hadn't found anything that, could point me towards the moon, so to speak, in a way that was resonant with me. And so it allowed me to seeing that they're all speaking about the same thing and forget what they're saying. It's the thing they're talking about that matters. Don't know if we want to go there, but
no, we can totally go there.
So for me, that's helped me kind of relax my judgment of other ways of seeing things or thinking about things. 'Cause it ultimately we're all, you know, all things are one. Right. And go ahead,
man. I just got good with Jesus.
Okay.
Not in the way that everyone else gets good with Jesus.
Okay.
You know, like I literally, when he says the only way to the creator is through me, he's 100% right for himself.
Okay.
right? Like, yeah, it's you, right? You are the way for you. You know, like you're going to find you. No one else can do it for you. No one else can find enlightenment for you. No one else can take you to the Father. No one else can bring you bliss. You have to do that all for you.
So then the way I see what you're saying and the way I see that is like, because again, I was very averse to any of that until I started seeing, again, I come from like an atheist background and I'd still kind of put myself in that camp, but I'm a lot more open-minded than that. The Tao Te Ching was a big kind of mind opener, I guess. But a few years after kind of thinking about these things, when I was still turned off by, you know, religious stories, I started realizing the power of metaphor, and that perhaps the value for me in those kinds of books was not believing that this literally happened and this magic thing happened, but that there was a message shared through metaphor. And that allowed me to not be so turned off by those things. And so the way I understand that is like, yeah, you know, and I again, still, I would say more in the atheist camp than anywhere else, but like, I'm able to listen to like quotes of Jesus or whomever and process them in a way that isn't a turnoff. So one way I process what you're saying, it sounds like maybe you're saying the same way, is, you know, I am the truth, the light. He's not talking about I, Jesus, who is outside of you, and you got to point to me and follow me. I am an example of me following myself and me listening to myself. And that process is the example that I would put out. And that for me is not, it doesn't push me away, because it's that resonates. And ultimately I think a lot comes down to resonance.
Yes. That is exactly probably a better, more impeccable wording than mine. But that, you know, it's good, but that's exactly what it is. Right. Like it's not Jesus himself. Right. It's the process, you know. There's
another line I think you'll like, judge not lest ye be judged.
Right.
I think so many of us think that means don't judge others or they'll judge you. Like it's this reciprocation. But the way, again, being open to this because I was willing to see it through metaphor and not, you know, magic in the traditional sense. Don't judge others, or you will become someone who judges, and you will be trapped in your own self-judgments. And for me, that's wisdom. You know, that's not, as opposed to don't do this or people will retaliate. That's to me, maybe it doesn't resonate as a more wise way to interpret that way of seeing it. Whereas like recognize, and I've seen it in myself that, you know, the more, why am I so hard on this person? Oh, it's actually a reflection of how I talk to myself. And it all comes back to you, right? And how you're dealing with you, right? In my opinion, like when I start, whatever it is I'm fucking doing, whatever, you know, it all. So when I can take that off, you know, and be like, okay, what's going on with you, Elliot? You know, like, do you need some more time with yourself? Do you need some more, you know, whatever. I mean, just a story with it. It's been so interesting. Like this, I got a concussion in the beginning of the year. And I hadn't been able to so I haven't really trained. I trained hard for the first time since January on Tuesday. Maybe it was Monday. I heard your review of that. Yeah. That was cool.
Yeah. You know, yeah. You reposted it. Thank you. I appreciate that, you know, but so I hadn't had any like jujitsu chaos, right? Like I was talking about, you know, which helps me with normal chaos, right? Like, so it felt so beautiful to have that chaos. And I've just been off since January, even though I mean, like I went downhill dark February, you know, and the beginning of March.
Like depression dark?
Like anxiety dark. Like on the phone crying with my fucking friend for no reason. Like I can't, you know, not sleeping, all this stuff, right? Yeah.
Concussion's a brutal beast.
Yeah, brutal. So right when COVID hit, I started to come out of it, you know, thank God, right? But the two would have sucked.
Right, yeah.
You know,
stuck at home, stuck in your head, yeah.
You know, closing all of the schools and not sleeping already, that would have been brutal.
Yeah.
One could have done it by itself. So I had a massage the other day on Friday. You know, I know we're not supposed to talk about these things right now, but whatever. And she does, like, I've been looking for another masseuse for about 5-6 years now, because the last like hour masseuse that we had did like energy work and cranial sacral therapy, all in one massage, right? This lady 5 years ago, we had it for 10 years. She didn't put any timers on, right? It was like, you have an appointment, you show up, it's done when it's done. And sometimes it's an hour and sometimes it's 3, right? Like, so, I mean, how she made any money, I don't fucking know, right? Because,
well, that's why you're looking for a new one.
Yeah, no. She stopped. She retired.
Okay.
You know? So, man, and I've been looking for another lady person like her since she retired. And dude, on Friday, I got this massage. My wife did too. And it felt like this lady. It felt, it felt like my lap. And I felt normal again for the first time since the second I got up off that table. Like, and we're talking January, right? We're talking all the way back to January. And not that I was really bad before that, but I was getting these headaches still, like, weirdly. I was a little out of my head, weirdly. And I don't know if it was concussion, not concussion, who fucking knows. But literally on Friday, it was an amazing massage. You know, it was my buddy's fiance. I called him afterwards. I was like, yo, dude, your girl's fire, you know? And I've been totally fine since.
Amazing.
You know? Just like, it's so interesting, the connection, mind, body, like whatever it is, man, you know, like
all things are one, right?
Yeah, man. It was an amazing experience. And then the jiu-jitsu experience that 2 days later, like, even like, just was like, damn, that was fun. I'm back.
Yeah. Right on. I mean, I want to say congrats, but I think that's why so many of us really resonate with jiu-jitsu and why it's been such a hard time. And for people that don't do jiu-jitsu, it's like, you know, if you're not someone who comes from more of like a fighting mindset or upbringing, it can seem like, oh, that's brutish and it's not for me. Whereas we know very much it's not that. And, you know, it is very much an emotional experience. And a learning experience unlike anything else, in that, you know, you go in and whether you're feeling good or not, or you have a good or poor performance, like ultimately it's about how do you feel about that? Like, your things are not firing. You didn't sleep well. I think I was listening to you with Henner and Huron Gracie. You were talking about this, like, if you didn't have a good sleep and then you go in and train, like, you might not perform well. That's its own thing. But then, are you judging yourself? Are you being hard on yourself for that? Or you go in and you kick butt? Are you like puffing out your chest and feel like you're better than other people? Like, you learn so much about yourself. And I've been put out a few articles on like what jiu-jitsu can teach entrepreneurs and business owners about success, or, you know, managing challenge, wins and losses, and been co-authoring this book called Sales Jiu-Jitsu. It's geared specifically towards salespeople. But the whole thing is like in a sales context, for example, when you go and have a loss, like that might've been 8 months of trying to close this deal, or, you know, nurture this deal and then close it. And then that's a heavy thing to accept, but it's also like you get maybe that experience 2-3 times a year. So your experience with loss is so limited, but on the mats, you're winning and losing like 30 times a day, you know? And so you're getting to learn about yourself through that process. Like we talked earlier about, like, ultimately being about, you know, self-discovery. You go and lose, like, do you waste energy getting frustrated? Or do you become the analyst and the scientist and just say, okay, well, what happened? And why was it? You know, I worked with sports psychologist who worked with some of the big names out of SBG Ireland. And, you know, he talked about, his name's David Mullins. We actually did a little Zoom call on mindset in uncertain times a few weeks ago. And whether working with me or in that call, he talks about like, if, you know, what do you do if you just get your butt kicked, whether it's like in a tournament or in training or traveling to another gym? You know, we can get emotional about it. We can try to work on our psychology. It's like, there's only one question. Why? It was a technical thing. Like, don't make the opponent a superhero. They did something and you did not do something, or you did something, and it just analyze, like, be a scientist about it. And that then translating to life, like, you know, when you've, you know, people at, when I was still in the corporate world, people would talk about, wow, you're so calm. How are you so calm all the time? And you know, I had been competing probably for like 5 years at that point. It's like, when someone who's trained to break arms and put people to sleep has tried to break your arm and put you to sleep, suddenly your boss being frustrated is not like it's not pushing your threshold, right?
Fight Club,
and
man.
Yeah, right. And it's like, and that's why, like, you know, I'm sure you have a similar school just based on your philosophy. Like, I'm sure you have great competitors, but you probably don't push that everyone's got to compete. And I'm that way, at least. But at the same time, I still encourage everyone to try it, because it is such a transformative experience. You know, you're putting yourself in the fire, and you're going to have those last minute doubts, and you're going, I mean, you've competed at the highest, you know, UFC, right? So I'm sure you've experienced it to the, you know, million X, but you learn so much about yourself, and it's such a confidence booster, even if things don't go your way, because we all have those moments, like right before we're about to, you know, enter the arena or step in on the mat, where we're like, oh, I could probably just leave. Like, I don't need to do that. Like, the mind starts playing all these tricks, right? And you felt that way, but you still did it. Even if, you know, things don't go your way, you get tapped, whatever. Like, you know, I of course, in the moment, we don't always feel this way, but like, I respect those who challenge themselves in that way. And I feel like, win or lose, you grow, and you are actually tougher, whether or not things go your way that day. You know, it's the journey, not the destination,
It's the journey.
as they say.
Yeah, it's the journey, right? It's the process. It is nothing
Process,
to do
not
with
product.
nothing to do with that result. You know, yeah, my school is set up very, very the same way, right? We have competitors. We have Elevation Fight Team with, you know, champion. No champion yet. Hopefully champion soon though. And we have jiu-jitsu competitors, and then we have, you know, doctors and lawyers.
Yep.
I want those doctors and lawyers to compete once, just one time, you know, just because it's the idea of, look, if somebody like just busted in your house right now, or I don't know if are you in your house or wherever you are,
yeah,
right? You know, and you had to defend yourself, there'd be no nerves. You'd be fucking fine. Hopefully you would take care of the situation. Afterwards, you would feel very sick, all that adrenaline, right? But there's no time for it on the front end. There's something to being scared on the front end. There's something to knowing when you are going to get into a fight, right? On this day, around this time, and then marching.
Absolutely. You know, that, like, that's good for you. Not only should you ever have a surprise experience, but it's also good for your confidence, because, you know, it's why I think it's so valuable to, I don't know if lifting weights is the right way to put it, but to work out and do something hard, because, and that's why I like to do it first thing in the morning, because you leave that session knowing, I'm someone who can do difficult things. And it's like, you know, they say, eat the frog, or like, do the hardest thing first.
Right.
It's because then the whole rest of your day is easier, because, you know, the word confidence, what's the root word? Confide. Confidence is confidence. Confidence in self. Self-confidence is you confiding in yourself. I can do this. Now you can just tell yourself because you're making up a story, or because, man, I've been doing this for years. Like, base experience is one of the greatest sources of confidence, so to speak. Right.
Right.
So,
and on the flip side, sometimes, like, what I like to tell my fighters with that is, once you win, you know, or lose, whatever, you get your 24 hours, and then we have to move on. right? We have to move on, win or lose, because now I need you working again. Right? The only time I want you to remember the experience of, like, for example, winning is right when you're about to go. Right when it's about to matter. And that could be like the week before, whenever that is for you, right? I want you to be able to harness. I want you to be able to intentionally harness that feeling. And I'm not just saying go in the fight. Maybe we do Fridays are the big days, right? Fridays are when we MMA spar, and I want to see winning if you're in camp. Right? So it's like, okay, Thursday night, I want you to start to harness your last fight so that when Friday morning comes or Friday afternoon comes and you got to get in that cage for your 3 rounds that matter, let me see it. Right? And then after the round, I want you to forget it. Now we're just knowledge. Now we're just assessing, like you said, right? Like now we're just, okay, what happened in our 3 rounds? And they don't matter. The only reason they matter is for us to see what it is that we need to improve on, do again, not do the right. Like that's it. That's it. Don't get all hung up on what happened in those 3 rounds.
For the, when my writing partner, Daniel Moskowitz, who's a high level sales guy, and I sat down to write this sales jiu-jitsu book, I came up with, I might make it a separate book on like the jiu-jitsu of life. Because I developed a framework that the whole book's based on the idea that you can use a competition as an analogy for a sales engagement. You know, it's very much a performance and there's very much a win or lose. So to give us a scaffolding or a framework to base the book on, I came up with this framework with 4 parts to break down. So like there's pre-fight, what you do before the fight. There's the fight, how do you engage and manage the fight? There's the end of the fight, how do you win the fight? And then post-fight. And most people, you know, just focus on the first 3, if not the middle 2, and they forget about that post-fight. In the post-fight section, it's like win or lose, like congrats, doesn't matter. You have one job. So like we have one of my MMA fighters, Prince Banny, fought a local black, he's a purple belt, like killer wrestler, and jiu-jitsu game is sick. He's used the same armbar 4 or 5 times in fights. He fought a local black belt and
in an MMA fight or jiu-jitsu?
In an MMA fight.
Okay.
And you know, beat him in 2 minutes, 3 minutes, something. So basically like effectively a flawless fight, but no, you know, and you know, we know who the guy is. He's a good local guy. We still had confidence in our ability on the ground, but the plan was still like, okay, we know he's got a strength here. Better to not let him dictate that a fight goes to the ground. At one point, the guy shot in on Prince and he stuffed the takedown, but the guy never should have gotten in on his hips. So even though it was like a perfect fight, there's nothing to learn. It's like, no, go and analyze. And then analyze every moment that things could have gone wrong, even in those perfect victories. And then also like, don't just be hard on yourself, be positively critical. What did we do well? And where should we focus? So like that armbar that he's pulled off a bunch of times, like far side spinning armbar, when you've got the underhook, like we've gone and dug deeper into it. And okay, how could the guy defend? And you almost lost it here. How can we shift that? And it's just be a scientist, right? When you're talking about, you know, I want the night before, I want my people to be in the positive side of it. So it was around that Naga, like Grappler's Quest era. When I say that era, like when I was competing in those tournaments.
That era's kind of gone, right? Naga's kind of gone out. Grappler's Quest has kind of gone out, right? Like,
yeah. But I'm just saying like early-ish, like right, 2003, right. 2004, I had a big shift in my results when I stopped like going into the fight and just seeing what happened, and B, you know, making sure the guy didn't do this or this didn't happen, and started focusing on myself, what I wanted to have happen. And one of the techniques we put in sales jiu-jitsu is what I call the highlight reel, where I would just see all of my best moves playing over and over and over, me kicking so much ass. And it's like, I've taught that to my students, and like the energy you bring to a match then is so, I mean, one, you have more fun. And I feel like when you have more fun, you're actually, you perform better. So for me, it was, it's a really valuable tool. And I love that idea of like put yourself in your last success, but even next levels, like take all your successes and chop up a little highlight and see all the those balloon sweeps to arm bars and like flying arm bar, like all your the things that energize you, because that energy is infectious isn't the right word, but it informs the performance in a very good way.
Man, for me, talking about like our performances here, what has really helped with me, and I don't know when I'm going to compete again. I might be done. I don't have the itch at all. Like, I don't.
What prompted, or is there something that like made that shift, or is that age, life, lifestyle?
Man. So I got to do ADCC. Like I got in, and it was the only thing that I hadn't accomplished, and then I'm almost 40 and I got it. And I was like, damn, I lost, whatever. And it was just really great. It was just a really great experience to have with my homies, to have with my professor, them all, like, so yeah, and that's a side story. But what got me, and I wish I could have harnessed it earlier in my career, but I know also like that wish is very difficult because you wouldn't have gotten here if it weren't for that. Right. Man, just happiness in my competing, like where, where I noticed it was I came back to competing in the middle of my really bad anxiety, and I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to be fucking scared, I'm going to give myself a reason to be scared. So I might as well compete again, and I hadn't competed in 5 or 6 years. And then I was approached, the Elevation Fight team was training out of Muscle Farm at the time, the Muscle Farm facility in Denver. And they wanted to do like this big thing, and they wanted me to fight Bushasha. And I was like, okay, well, let me get one under my belt first. Right. So I do a fight to win pro. I get that out of the way. I get a win, and then I fight Bushasha.
Oh, gosh. Well, one warm-up fight's probably all you need
for Bushasha, Yeah. So,
So you dominated Bushasha.
Oh, I crushed Bushasha.
Yeah, as expected.
At that time as a 37-year-old against the 26-year-old best in the world. Yeah, for sure. Specimen. Destroyed Bushasha. Whatever, don't really care if it's Bushasha, right? And then I go on and I have my next match, and I lose my next match to Tex Johnson, right? Good black belt, right? Like very good black belt. And then when I had lost that one, I had already signed up for another fight to win pro against Bruno Bastos. So I'm just like going through these like row of killers, and I haven't been competing. And after the Tex Johnson match, I was like, man, maybe I just don't have this anymore. Like maybe this just isn't for me. And up until that point, I had never beaten an actual jiu-jitsu champion at jiu-jitsu. I'd never really beat anybody that was good, that had won anything at the black belt level. So I'm sitting there all fucking scared before the Bruno match. And I'm like, you know what, man, fuck this. It's a fight to win. So one of my students went early on in the night. I was the main event, right? And I was like, I'm hungry. I don't want to sit here and be scared. I'm going to go get sushi because I really love sushi, And then I went to my favorite sushi restaurant, and I fucking had sushi, had a great time with the chef because he's the owner, he was there, and one of my students was there, and I was just fucking chilling, I was just happy. And then I came back, and my kids came in the back with me, and I was just warming up, hanging out with my kids, and I was like, man. And then I went out there, and I fucking was crushed.
Fuck yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute. I was like, this is what I need. I don't need all this fucking stress. Like I am who I am. Like all the work is done. If you do the work, and I did the work, if you do the work is done. How can I, what does Elliot need? I need my kids around me playing. I need, I need this happiness of like, yo, man, it's all good. I'm gonna wait. When this is over, I'm gonna go hang out with my kids and yada yada, and and that's it. Like I had to bring it down a level, right? The intensity, because I could just take it so intense that like my life was going to end if I fucked this up?
That's an easy thing to fall into. It's it's a primal experience. You're going, it's not like the UFC, but it is very much a fight. Like, it's very sincere. This person is really trying to use their 20 years of training to tap you, and not to mention that it's public. And so it's natural to fall into that. But I've the second Abu Dhabi Pro that I did, it was pretty cool story, but I had won it the year before. But then the second year, I've gone through a few experiences where, I had to really question, like, why do I compete? And like, what am I doing this for?
The fuck am I here for?
Yeah. Right. And I think that's really important. And I think, when you say you're, maybe you're done, like, one, that's fine if it's the case. Like, I think a lot of us who come up in the jiu-jitsu world, as we talked about, like, your whole identity can be wrapped up in being a competitor. And so, if you're not a competitor anymore, it's like, who am I and what's the purpose of what I'm doing? But, that realization, like, so 2010 Abu Dhabi Pro, I went in, with just loving that I was doing this, and I started to kind of harmonize my jiu-jitsu path and this impact focus. And, I realized that I'm doing this to ultimately to maybe build a name so that I can make a bigger difference in the world. And that the winning and losing was kind of secondary to that. And, just the idea of being an example of positivity and action and, going and giving my best, like, that was so encouraging and inspiring a feeling that I went out, and even though I'd won, I lost to Hickson black belt Shane Rice in the finals. But I had more fun in that experience and I performed better, despite losing that last match, than I had the year before when I was putting all this like pressure on myself. And yeah, I was, there's a philosophy I think you'd like called the 5 classes of pleasure. I can explain it if you like, but one of the ideas is that pleasure is like fuel, and it energizes you to do whatever you're looking to do. And the pleasure you got from being around your children, that's different than, physical pleasure of like sushi or whatever. Right. This was like a high class pleasure, and it inspired in you great results. Obviously, going and beating a killer like that. Right. And so the question is like, what can we do in those high performance moments to put all, to as best we can be on our own side? And then how do we kind of make that habit so that it's there for us all the time?
All the time. Right. Right. And that's just a process.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that just comes back to figuring out the process with, I think the hardest part of the process is the not judging, right? Like not judging ourselves mm-hmm. when we don't hit the mark, mm-hmm. right? Because that missing the mark is part of the process, right? Like, mm-hmm. Sinning in the religious sense, right? Like this, like it's not to not sin, right? We all do it, like all these religious texts are correct, and yes, we do it. What do we do with it, right? What do we do with that missing of the mark?
Well, I think so. Just for those that maybe haven't heard this, and I don't know if you got it from the same place, but Eckhart Tolle in A New Earth, that's where I got. That's where I first heard this very different definition of the word sin. We think of sin as being like a moral crime,
right?
Whereas Eckhart Tolle talks about the original definition of the word sin is missing the mark,
right?
And that again, that like was a little that made kind of these guilt focused religious perspectives a little less of a turnoff, because it wasn't about judging you; it was more about showing you that there's more to life than these things. These kind of common traps will allow you to see. I think in terms of the not judging, like what happens, and I can be the most enlightened person as a coach, cornering someone who just lost, and then I go in, and if it doesn't go my way, like, I'm not exactly a big baby about it, but I'm not a big baby about it. And the question is why. There's a line in the Tao Te Ching: hunting and racing, mad in the mind. And I didn't understand what that meant until I recognized that hunting and racing are a metaphor for competing. Competing makes you kind of crazy. Why? Because it does this. It makes you myopic. Suddenly your whole world, your whole universe is this fight. And if you lose it, well, your whole world seems like garbage, right?
Right.
And it's just learning to willingly, voluntarily suspend sanity for that moment, but not be attached to that myopia, and recognize that this is, being able to step out of it and see that it's part of a larger process has been really important for me, because we don't control outcome.
No, we don't. And I think some of that myopia is kind of good though, right? Because for me, the present moment, let me tell you, when you're standing there and the cage locks and Buffer says your name, you have never been more present in your fucking life, right? You have never been more present in your life than the second before someone's literally going to try to kick your head off. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there's something amazing about that, right? There is something amazing about that. Mm-hmm. So can we learn how to do that, right? That presence, that myopia in other places in our life, and be really present with my conversation with you, with my first and fourth grade work that's about to start to happen, right? And not wish that it would end, and all these things. So there is some amazingness about it. It's the what we do with it sometimes that can be so terrible I hate that word. I'm trying not to say that word either. This can be so unskillful in what it is we're trying to do with our lives.
Generally I try to approach competing as like a, opportunity for personal growth, but that should not be mistaken as like, oh, I don't care whether I win or not.
Right.
If you're using it as an opportunity for personal growth, well, part of the real experience is really wanting to win and letting yourself be in that myopia and letting it matter. And it's that dichotomy of contradictions.
Polarity, man. Polarity's a bitch. Polarity's a son of a bitch.
Yin yang, right?
Yeah.
It's finding that middle way. And so it's like, let yourself be fully wrapped up in it. And then when it's time, let it go.
It's the yin and the yang, like you said, is what makes me amazing makes me terrible. It's the same coin, right? It's just the other side of it.
Every strength comes with weaknesses, right? And that helps in, I think, not judging oneself, recognizing that, because a lot of us, I know for myself, it's like, oh, I should have no weaknesses. I should be, flawless, and obviously, I'm far from that, and most, we all are, and it's learning to, like, that doesn't mean just accept where you need to grow and not try to grow. But see it more as an area for growth rather than like, oh, I'm a failure because I have this thing that this way I think, or this thing that I do. Like, it's like, recognize it, but don't judge it. Right. It's like, it's like, oh no, I'm mounted. I'm a terrible person. No. It's like, you're here now.
Yeah. You just have to deal with the mount.
That's it. It's like, it's easy, when bad things happen, to lament and think about, oh, why did I make this mistake? It's like, that's not getting you out. The only thing that, if you're stuck on a mount, doesn't help you to think about, oh, the good old days when I was on top. And it's like, bro, you're here now. All that matters is what's step one from here, and how you feel about yourself. Like, that's not getting you out.
You can deal with how you got your guard passed later.
Exactly.
Right?
And you should.
And you will, hopefully. That's the assessment after. But right now you're fucking mounted. Get out.
Get out, right?
Oh man, Elliot, we could keep going.
Yeah.
But I have to go do first and fourth grade, like I said. So
family first.
Before my wife starts screaming at me about why the schoolwork didn't get done today.
No doubt.
So man, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. That was just great.
Thank you. Likewise.
I would like, when we get off the line here, I'd like to exchange information, maybe do this again, maybe just keep in contact, because I think we have so much similar philosophies and ideas. I don't know. I like new friends possibly.
Yeah. So, no, it's resonance, right? Seem like we're on the same page in a lot of ways. So really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Tell everyone where they can reach you.
So I just launched, as I mentioned before we got on, I just launched my video site. I've been teaching jiu-jitsu for like 15 years. And as a guy who didn't come up with the most structured jiu-jitsu education, I've been trying to, as a teacher, figure out like what's the best way to teach beginners. So bjj101.tv. I've got courses for people who've never trained. I've got a course that takes people all the way up to what I think is like a world-class blue belt. Like I think most blue belt curricula, if they even exist, most places they don't, they've got maybe, 80 to 150 techniques. This has 300 plus techniques, but it's designed in such a way that it's actually easier to learn because it's sequences. So bjj101.tv. The big impact project I was mentioning is globalunity.org. And I'm sure we could talk about that another time, but
we're just going to have to do version 2 because
that would be awesome,
man. I didn't even, there was one thing that I really wanted to talk to you about that we didn't even touch on, which is the instruction of females, right? Mm-hmm. And a female team, which you started. Mm-hmm. Your BJJ philosophy and teaching here, what you just said there with sequences rather than a particular move, is so important in my opinion, and this global impact. So we're going to do another one, man.
We'll do it again. Yeah.
We're going to do it again because we have to talk about those 3 things, and I'm sure we could fill up another podcast.
I would love
just
to.
That. So yeah.
And the last thing I should have mentioned, next Saturday, I don't know when this episode will go up. I'm actually doing so I have an old student who moved to China years ago. And she got in touch recently. She had, with everything going on there, she had acquired a ton of masks. So she sent me masks that we donated to a local hospital. And next Saturday, we're doing a fundraising webinar with a dozen of Canada's top instructors and athletes, Oliver Taza, Emily Kwok, Stefan Kesting, and a whole bunch of other like top flight people. It's a fundraising webinar. So that people can find out about that at fight2unite.org, which is my kind of jiu-jitsu impact project.
So this episode won't go out in time.
Okay.
But so let's text afterwards.
Okay.
No, and I'll put out the message.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. So I'll share the message of this, and I'll swipe it up and stuff and put it on my page. So let's really talk afterwards. Yeah, we'll exchange information afterwards, and then we'll get that out. But as always, guys, look, the 2 things that are the most important part of this podcast. 1, go into the fire, right? Go into the fire. Do the hard work of your life, and when you do that, you will find your power. And Elliot and I talked on it earlier in the podcast. It's not going to be his power, and it's not going to be my power. You're going to find your unique individual power when you go into that fire. What comes out will be amazing, or you'll be dead and then you won't know the difference. So who cares, but the amazing part is the fire and the power that comes through afterwards. So man, go out there and find your power, everyone.